Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record this week's Mike in the Midwest a bit early because we got a busy afternoon. So let's get after it. 143. Things that have disappeared. Well, we have to be quick because we have a lot of feedback from last week. A lot of people have driver's ed stories. All right, let's get after it. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 143 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. My name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find it all over the place, but you know that because you're a patron, which means you found the show at some point and hopefully you liked it because you support the show. You are the folks that keep us on the air. And I just say, thank you for letting me live my dream. I love doing podcasts. If I didn't, I wouldn't have been doing so many shows every single week without fail for over 15 years. I love this stuff. This is my toy shop every week. So thanks for letting me do this. You guys are the best. I hope you always get a kick out of listening to the shows. I know you probably don't listen to every show because if you add them all up, we've done about 2,500 shows at this point with all the old live shows that we didn't used to count. These shows that, almost 150 of these at this point, almost 2,300 Be Our Guest regular shows. It's a lot, but I hope you drop in and enjoy them at your leisure and that we can keep you company sometimes in the car when you're by yourself or on a run or while you're walking the dog or cutting the grass, whatever it is. I appreciate that because I know that I am a huge consumer of podcasts and because I go on the treadmill every morning for a couple of hours at least. And I just like to catch up with my podcast list every day. And it doesn't really matter the content. Everybody has their content, whether it's Disney or technology or retro topics. That's what I listen to. But for me, after the first few shows, I just want to catch up to see what the podcaster is up to. Like, what are their kids up to? The kids like I listen to Rob down in Oklahoma. He does some retro podcasts. His one kid goes to University of Oklahoma. And he's converting an old cargo van into some van that he can camp out in. And I just like his stories. He's never met the guy, but we have a lot of similar backgrounds from what he's given me in the podcast over the last 10 years. So I hope you get that out of our show. I can only hope that you do, that you see us, Ricky, Pam, and Scott. Now that we've added him to the show, I think he's been a great addition to the team. That you see us as friends, because that's my 100% goal is that, maybe sometime you're lonely, you pop in the show and it gives you a smile, it gives you something to be happy about. And thank you for supporting this because I have gotten emails over the years where folks have said that they were struggling, they were lonely, they were having a hard time, and the show has put a smile on their face and has meant a lot to them. And it's because of your support that we're able to do that. So we all do that. They say it takes a village. And you guys are the village. So anyway, I just want to say that. Hope you're having a great week. Hope you had a great Easter with your friends and family. We had a super one here. The weather has been awesome in Missouri this week. I mean, right now it's 69 degrees, I think it said when I went out to walk Riley just a few minutes ago to take her morning restroom break. Sunny. I mean, it's not supposed to rain for at least 5 days. It's going to be 85 this afternoon. Easter, I think, was 73 and sunny. It was beautiful. We could eat on the deck. We had all of Pam's family over. We had honey baked ham. We had mashed potatoes. We had deviled eggs. And all the good stuff. I mean, we were just so blessed. And Mallory made some kind of like dessert dip that she found on TikTok, this menu. I think it's called pasture dip or something. Oh my gosh, it was so good. You dip Nilla wafers or I use graham crackers. And I'm telling you, because you use these like robin eggs, chocolate candies you crush up and put in there. Just look it up. I think it's called pasture something on TikTok. But and there's a little left in the fridge. And I'm not saying I didn't dip my finger in and get some this morning because I'm the only one home. It was awesome. So anyway, hope you're having a great week and that everything's going well. Good luck to everybody who's headed down for springtime surprise races this weekend. I'll be down on Thursday through Sunday. I'm flying out at 5:15 on Thursday morning. So follow me on the social media at BRGuestMike. I'll be posting because I'm going solo. Scott will not be doing this one. So I'll just be going around like I was at Disneyland, taking a lot of pictures, doing some videos, and just having a good time, running a 5, a 10, and a 10 miler on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and kind of just walking around the parks and having a good time all the rest of the time. So please do follow me on the socials this weekend, and can't wait to see everybody. So if you see me, say hello. I'll be at Pop Centuries where I'm hanging my hat this weekend. What else is going on? Oh, we had Marathon Weekend 2024 registrations this morning. I saw a lot of people successfully get in. I saw Dopey. I saw Scott got in the half marathon with him and Emily. So I think it went better than last year. I'm hoping. I went in through a charity last month. I just couldn't take the stress, and why not support folks that need support at the same time? And so I think it went well, but it's still only an hour later. So we'll see. Because I'm doing this one a little bit early because I'll tell you why in just a minute. But yeah, so hope you had a great one. Now, last week we got to jump in because this show can't be super long. Mallory has let me tell you about what's been going on around here real quick. Mallory has cheerleading tryouts for next season next week. So it's always for some reason it's always the week after springtime surprise races. Cause I remember last year, her freshman, she was trying out as an eighth grader for her freshman year of high school. It was very stressful. And I remember talking her through the night before while I was at Walt Disney World. And so it happens again that tryouts start next Monday. And so there's a lot of skills they have to perform, the gymnastic skills, tumbling skills, and so forth, but along with the cheers and the chants and the fight songs and stuff like that. Now, she was on the squad last year, but it's super competitive at their high school. So over the past month or so, she's not done all-star cheer this year, which is the super competitive cheer, where you compete, and we used to go down to Summit to Walt Disney World for the championships every year. She didn't do that this year. She just did high school, but she's been refining her skills, and she's a little nervous because she had an accident doing one of the tumbling skills. And her shoulder came out of the socket. They put it back, but this was about 6-9 months ago. And ever since then, she's been a little sketch on doing this back walk over, or I forget what it's called, but it's one of the skills she has to do. She has to throw at tryouts. So we've been giving her doing private lessons at her old gym with some of the tumbling experts. So today I got to take her at 4 o'clock. So that's why this one's coming out just a little bit early. And we've been doing that every day the past, not every day, but almost every day the past couple of weeks, giving her private lessons for 30 minutes with these tumblers to build up her confidence. And it's one of those things that if you have kids, you just want to give them every opportunity to succeed. And it's a struggle because I know that she has she's super strong, right? Mallory is she's all muscle. She's tall like me. She's muscular, but it's a mental barrier. Once you hurt yourself and you're flinging yourself backwards under your arms and trying to, flip and then, trying to move into a tuck and stuff like that. I could understand because there's no way I could do it. I get it. But, then you got to realistically look that there's cheerleaders that do way more than that, all over the place. And to succeed, you have to be courageous and you have to be fearless, and you just have to have trust that you're going to make it through. So a lot of this is mental. So here I am. This is one of the conversations I want to have with you guys because I kind of see you guys, the patrons here, as my sounding board many times because you guys give great feedback. And I feel like I'm friends with so many of you, and I love you guys. Is that is a dad of girls because I was a dad. I went through sports. I did sports, but I played baseball. I played football. I played basketball. I didn't cheerlead, and so I think my kids both saw me as an athlete because I still run, and I'm still in decent shape, but it's hard for me to try to give her advice in cheerleading, but I know the mental side of sports is all similar, right? You have to be mentally strong. You have to trust your training. You have to trust because she's done that skill before, but now she's a little sketch on it. And I totally get it because I'd be nervous. So it's one of those things as we go into next week and tryouts again, where I got to build up her confidence without being blunt, and without putting it over. You got to take it right to the line without, setting her off. It's a fine line as I want to coach her and build up her confidence because I know she has it. I love her and I believe in her 100%, but she doesn't always believe in herself. And I think that as a parent, that's one of those struggles that you have. But, that's I still see myself as, still an 18-year-old athlete sometimes. And to see that I'm the parent and I have to push my kid to be her best. And understand that it's not easy. Like it's hard. High school sports and tryouts and all this stuff is stressful. I get it. So just we'll see how it goes. Well, and there's always a plan and it'll work out for the best always. So anyway, that's why I'm doing this early, because at 4 o'clock we have a lesson I got to take her to. Anyway, last week we talked about driver's ed. Speaking of Mallory, teaching her how to drive, she's getting better. We're still driving and we're doing better. And thanks to Mark Yerkes up in Chicago, he sent me some great emails about his driver's ed up in Chicago. Hilarious. I've almost cried when I read his email about it, but we have lots of feedback. So let's get into it. John Luther says, Mallory needs to learn how to drive a manual transmission or else she won't be able to do the Amazing Race with you. I have said that 1,000 times. And also she could drive my Jeep, a Wrangler. I would have killed to have driven a Jeep when I was her age. John continues. Our driver's education was a little different than yours, though it was the same year. It was run by a local company over a semester that took place after school. The classroom portion was in our high school cafeteria and taught by the shop teacher. No Sims component. The live driving portion was the same. 1 to 3 of us would be in the car with an instructor who did at least have a brake pedal. My biggest memories of learning to drive were my mother's car, which was a manual, which I had a bunch of trouble with. I failed my driver's test the first time in that car. Apparently, the RMV employee didn't know how I shifted. It was the same person for my second test, and they may have passed me just so they wouldn't have to drive with me again. You know what? John, I've joked about that. I wonder how many of those instructors that give the tests, like, because there's so many bad drivers out there, are just like, you know what? Here, I don't know what the passing grade is. Like it was a 70 or something, maybe. Like here, this 71. Just get out of my face. Go drive, and nature will run its course. I hope that isn't the case, but I'm telling you, I don't know how it is where you live, but man, in St. Louis, there's some terrible drivers, and I'm just like, how did you get a license? Like, could you not read road signs? Like, how'd you pass the written test? Anyway, thanks, John, for the feedback. That is a good memory. Jennifer says, great show, Mike. My driver's ed experience, the same year as yours, I believe. Look at this. We're all the same age. I love it. I was also completely at school, but not all during the same hour. We had 9 weeks of classroom driver's ed. Then we were assigned to a 4-week behind the wheel course during a study hall or lunch. A passing grade in both was required to take the state's driver's test. My behind the wheel teacher was the football coach, and he used the brake once. I also had a scary driver girl who nearly crashed us. My high school was a simulator room, or had a simulator room, but it wasn't used because the simulators were only manual transmission. Okay, yeah, see, I think a lot of the football coaches were probably driver's ed teachers. I think that was common. And I think it seems like everybody had to have like one, and I'm not saying it was always a girl, but one person per car that couldn't drive. And how did they identify that person? But I think everybody, like every person that I've ever talked to is like, oh yeah, we had that one person who hit mailboxes, or oh yeah, we had the one person who I thought was going to T-bone somebody at every intersection. I never heard anybody say, oh yeah, we had 3 other good drivers in the car, but maybe it was that person. Maybe they just didn't know. I don't know. But that's it. It's interesting too that Jennifer, like, you had to have passing grades in both halves to be able to take the test. Because in St. Louis, you just took the test. Like, you didn't even have to take driver's ed. You just walked in. You could take it just cold. I mean, if you thought you could, and people did. I mean, because in Missouri, a lot of people grow up just driving tractors and stuff. So I guarantee you, people down in like southern Missouri, like Poplar Bluff, where my cousins live, they probably don't even take driver's ed because they've been driving. I mean, my cousin, who's a few years younger than me, grew up on a farm. And he was driving a full-on F-150 pickup truck when he was 12 around the farm because they baled hay. And so he would drive the pickup behind my uncle so that they could throw the bales in the back of the pickup. And he was 12. And I was so jealous that he got to drive an F-150 when, he was 12. Like, I was still riding a bike. I couldn't believe it. But he probably passed his test without ever taking driver's ed. Anyway, Deanna says, my dad was a driver's ed teacher when I was learning to drive. He sent me to a different driver's ed school because he knew I'd be too headstrong to listen to him. Yes. Okay. I never used the bell on this show, but let's do it. You need the bell because that is the smartest dad in the history of dads. In hindsight, he was right. She says, haha. He is now getting to use his skills to teach my 15-year-old to drive. He still teaches driver's ed. Apparently, she is a better listener than I was. Yeah, I think one generation removed, you're cool. But yeah, teaching your kid, and especially if it's in your lane, it's the same thing. Pam and I are both, we both have master's degrees in elementary education. We're both teachers, and we both, we have advanced degrees in education. When we would sit down to try to tutor, like, or help Paige or Mallory with homework, fights. I'm like, we get paid well to teach. We know how to break this down. Nope, 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 nope. We'd have to like go across the street, have them help you because it never worked. Deanna, you're so right. Have a great week. Thanks so much for the feedback. Len, my buddy out in Maryland. My dad taught me how to drive well before I took driver's training. He always calmed my fears about being pulled over by telling me if you drive perfectly, no one has a reason to pull you over. He even let me solo before driver's ed once because my younger sister needed to be picked up unexpectedly from school and neither of my parents were available. He told me to take the car and pick her up without having a license. Driver's ed was taken at our school. During one driver session, the instructor had a check sheet that he used to assess our driving by noting errors in our driving. About halfway through my drive, he threw his clipboard on the seat and asked what I had done wrong. He said, absolutely. And I asked what I had done wrong. He said, absolutely nothing. There is no reason for me to hold this clipboard if you aren't going to make any errors. I remember I got one ding on my driver's license driving test for having my front wheel slightly churned while waiting to complete a left turn in the middle of an intersection. Otherwise, the driver's test was a breeze. I loved teaching our kids how to drive. All right, everybody, listen up. If we go on a road trip, Len is driving. That's good stuff. And your dad must have been a good teacher. He must have been patient and kind. I'm a hothead. Like when it comes to driving, like let's do this. Like, I wasn't like that in my classroom. But when it comes to your kids, I think it's different. I don't know. And Mallory is Pam always says Mallory's got my temper because you might not know this because I don't do this on the show. But with sports, I can have a little bit of short fuse, like in stuff like that. Let's do this right and let's do this now kind of attitude. But like, let's don't do it halfway. We're going to do this right. We're going to do this properly. We're going to do this now. We're not going to put it off. We're not going to procrastinate. So I can't take a 98% effort. So that's great though. I love that. Dennis, my buddy down in Texas, says the process of getting a driver's license is so different now than when I got my license. Back then, I only took an elective driver's ed class because it was available because I had the available hours at school and I could get a discount on my auto insurance. We usually got to drive once every 10 days with one of the coaches at the school. You didn't want to drive with the football coach. Let's just say it was never fun. Other than that, to get my license, I showed up with my proof of age, took the written exam, took the driver's exam, and that was that. And Dennis was in St. Louis, I believe, at this time. Same for me. You just went. I remember I just went to the DMV or whatever, the place where you could take your test. You just showed them your birth certificate. You took the written exam. Okay, pass. Then 3 in the car. Okay, you go out. Went in my mom's 1987 Pontiac Grand Am. Passed that. Boom. He was good to go. Picked up my friends from school that afternoon. I skipped school on my 16th birthday. Okay, back to Dennis. He says, I taught my oldest son to drive a couple of years ago, and I'm getting ready to teach my younger son to drive this year. Now they have to take an online course that lasts about a dozen hours and then pass a test to get their permit. After that, there's more online courses to take, a driver's log of over 40 hours to complete that only allow 1 hour a day to count, and then the driver's exam. Plus, if you want to take the test through the DPS, you have to sign up a couple of months in advance. Who has time for that? I had my son take his exam through a private driver's school, but it came at a $75 cost. Given the responsibility and potential consequences of driving, it probably makes more sense to only award licenses the way it is done now, but the bureaucracy of the whole thing is kind of mind-boggling. Good luck to Mallory as she learns to drive. That's a great point, Dennis, because and here's the other deal about this. I don't want to scare Mallory. I try to build her confidence when she drives because she's very tentative. I think I said that in the other show. But I do drop in that, like we were at a stop sign or stoplight and we were crossing a highway because we live right off of a state highway where the speed limit is 55. Our subdivision sits right off of it. And we were just crossing the highway because she wasn't ready for the highway yet. But I told her when you get ready to drive on that highway, you have to go the speed and you got to look twice. And I said, when the light turns green, you can't just go. You got to look and make sure that people stop because somebody could run that light. It happens. And I looked over and there were two crosses right at that intersection that people had put to remember kids that were killed in an accident there. And it wasn't to scare her, which it did. It shook her, but it was to remind her that there are real life consequences when you get behind the wheel. Um, did I do right or wrong there? I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it scares you to death when you put your kid out there. I remember went through that with Paige. I mean, she's 26 now, but it scared me to death when she started driving. And with Mallory, it scares me way more than Paige. All right, we got a few more here. Jennifer says, great show, Mike. The simulator story was hilarious. My high school had a simulator in the early 1990s, but we didn't use them because they're only manual transmission. Ironically, the car my parents got us was a stick. It was a 1988 Yugo, and I didn't learn to drive it until after I got my license. My kids went to the same high school that I did about 20 years later. We both took the classroom driver's ed at school, and behind the wheel was a study hall or lunch. Our daughter took behind the wheel with a private company during the summer because of her July birthday. I believe both parts were required in Illinois before you could take your license. P.S. Do we know what you gave Pam for her birthday? Do you get to know? I'm giving her a trip, but we haven't planned it out yet. I will give more details on that as they become available, but it's a big trip. But we have not set a date on that because the podcast cruise is happening in the summer. She's a teacher, so we're having scheduling issues, but I will let you know because we're in the works with it, but it's going to be pretty sweet. Someplace neither of I have ever dreamed we would go. Trisha, she jumps in and says, my experience sounds exactly like yours, except my parents ended up having to pay for me to go to a private driver's education training because the time I could take the class was during summer school and we went to Hawaii. So poor me, Trisha, you poor thing. But I can also relate to your feelings about Mallory. I have two teenagers and they both got in the car clueless. They also don't know how to get to places because they never pay attention. And I have said the same thing. I grew up on riding lawnmowers, golf carts, four-wheelers, etc. My kids didn't have that experience. Oh, and I also dropped my dad off after my driver's test, picked up my best friend, and we were gone. Those were the days. However, as a parent now, I'm glad my kids couldn't do that. Good luck. Trisha, we did exactly the same thing. That's it. Because I told you I skipped school on my 16th birthday, got my license, picked up my buddies from school, 2 o'clock when school dismissed at Hazelwood Central. I think we went straight to Taco Bell and we just probably went out that whole night. I don't even know how I got the car the whole day because it was with my mom's car, but it was awesome. My mom was cool then. George, my buddy from Aloha, who's now in Washington State with Guava Dog. Man, that video of Guava Dog on the ice still is one of the funniest things that I've ever seen on the internet. When I think of it, I crack up. George says, aloha, Mike. Glad to hear you had a great time in California. I was in California recently too to help my dad move to Texas. I helped him pack a U-Haul and drive his stuff from California to Texas and back. 24 hours of driving each way. And of course, I made sure to enjoy In-N-Out and Whataburger. Oh, both so good. I took driver's ed, but it was optional and after school. But interesting enough, my freshman year in high school, when I lived in Virginia, hunter gun safety was part of the curriculum for the boys. It was taught during the first half of the semester of health class. Not sure how how they are related, but I guess if you don't get shot while hunting, you're healthy. LOL. But back to driver's ed. We didn't have the luxury of the simulator, but one day we were shown a film of a bunch of accident scene footage that included the graphic details. I guess it was to scare us straight to drive safe, not to speed, and don't race trains. Oh my God. Yeah, we didn't see like gory details, but I could see where we all grew up in a generation. Like you see memes on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like, Generation X, the last generation before the sissies came. I don't know if that's true. And, like before people got a little soft and we protected everybody, but man, they spared no they didn't hold any punches like when we were young. They would show you, like George said, like at his school, Hunter education, in public school. Here's how which they do that in Missouri. They still do that in Missouri. And my cousins, like I said, down Poplar Bluff, they take gun safety in public school, which is okay because that's a part of everybody hunts down there. And I would much rather have kids know how to safely handle a gun than just to pick one up and go out and fire away at anything that moves. If they're going to be deer hunting, that's better. But like, could you imagine like today in 2023 if you show graphic car accident scene in a high school? I mean, we have a guy like a consumer reporter named Elliot Davis on our Fox affiliate. He's like he would show up and there would be like a 5-part expose on that. But I mean, in the 90s or the 80s, okay, just toughen up. Just make sure you're not in the next film. I mean, that stuff happened. It's unbelievable. George, I hope you're doing well. I hope the family's doing great. Trisha, my friend up in Wisconsin, says we did driver's ed through school as well. Our shop teacher was the instructor. We were registered for the class based on our birthday, so I had to wait until the spring to do the class, the last in my friend group, because my birthday was in April. I did most of my behind the wheel with my dad. My mom was a dashboard bracer, so her anxiety was not good for a student driver. Fast forward to college when my husband attempted to teach me how to drive a stick. Spoiler alert, I still don't know how to drive a stick. We made an agreement we would never talk about the failed attempt. Trisha, you will never win the amazing race, but you'll have a happy marriage, it sounds like. So that's probably better. No, that's so funny though. You mentioned like I was a November birthday, so I was one of the first in my class to be able to get a license. So that does matter. It's very true. I love these memories. And our last one, Brandon, says my driver's ed experience was very similar. The instructors were the baseball coach and the softball coach. Half of the semester was in the classroom and the simulator. The simulator we had was the same setup that you mentioned. I'm not convinced that any of us took that part too serious. By the time the road instruction started, I already had my license. My road instructor was the baseball coach. We drove a Chevy sedan and we had a brake and he had a brake pedal, but no steering wheel. Truthfully, we often ran whatever errands the coach needed to complete that day. A few times we even drove to a local lake and he would let me and my buddy drop a line in the water. That probably wouldn't go over well today, but it's a great memory. Okay, totally off topic real quick. So if you're an athlete in high school, at least it was in the 90s, because I played baseball and I pitched for the varsity all 4 years. I was left-handed. So it didn't mean I was great. It just meant I was like 6'3" and left-handed. So my Legion coach and high school coach was my social studies teacher. And so my sophomore year, I was kind of a nerd. So I took an honors class. I took honors European studies. And this coach taught that class. So if you got an A in the class, it counted as 5 points on a 4-point grading scale. So that way I could get higher than a 4.0. So I'm taking this honors class, right? And all I really had to do in his class was I would keep, because it was second semester, I would do the stats from the game the night before, either the high school or the Legion game, and keep everything and send them into the newspaper because they were always published in the newspaper. And I'd write one paper on the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I got an A. I mean, that's how high school was in the late night 80s and early 90s. That's how it was. And that's just how it went. Yeah, the coaches would totally go on errands like in driver's ed run. I'd get it. Anyway, great memories, guys. Oh my gosh, you guys are the best. All right. Show's kind of long. I got to make sure we get this wrapped because I'm doing this in the morning and I got other stuff that I got to get finished because obviously I got to get the work done and got to get Mallory to her cheer thing. And I appreciate you guys. But the topic I want to bring to the table is this. It's something I brought up about the Disneyland show when I went to Disneyland a couple of weeks back now. I mentioned something and I want to get your feedback on it because I think Ricky and Pam or Scott, I can't remember who was on the show with me. I think it was Scott and Ricky. We talked about it briefly, but we didn't get into it. And I mentioned going into Toontown, the newly opened, refurbished Toontown at Disneyland, and how now it's really set up for picnicking. And I love that. There's a lot of green areas. You can actually buy a little picnic basket with meal that a family can share for about $25 or so with sandwiches and chips and, drink and stuff like that. And I mentioned that I think that a lot of kids don't have an experience. Like if you take a 10-year-old kid on the street right now, and I'm just guessing at this point, but I mean, remember, I was a teacher in a very low socioeconomic area of Missouri, of St. Louis. And I haven't taught for 7 years, but my wife still teaches in the same district. So I'm still connected to the district. But those kids, I bet you most of them had never been on a picnic. Now, I think they knew what a picnic was like, it is an idea, like as a theory. They kind of know a picnic is you sit on the ground. But I was always a teacher that you gotta, if you can give a kid an experience that is so much more rich than just reading about it or somebody telling you what it is. And so I wonder, what's your take on that? I was wanting to bring that to the table for next week, so you can leave me some feedback on this. Like, do you guys still go on picnics? And here's the thing, I bet you do, because our audience kind of skews to experiential things. You go on vacations, you do things. I mean, this is a perfect example. You're all about getting out in the world and having experiences. So it's going to skew. Yes, we probably went on a picnic for lunch yesterday. We did it at Easter. So I'm betting we're going to get a lot of that. But what do you think you see in your communities? Do you think there's a lot of kids today that still maybe at the age of 10 have never like gone to a park and brought a blanket and brought a basket that has a sandwich, some chips, maybe some lemonade or some sodas or Kool-Aid or whatever in there, and had that experience where they don't bring a Game Boy, they don't bring a Switch, and they bring some stale bread and feed the ducks. I mean, that's we did that all the time as kids. We did that all the time. We went to St. Ferdinand Park in Florissant, Missouri, and we'd always save the old bread that went, got hard, and we'd feed the ducks, and we'd have a picnic. And it was such a big deal because we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but you didn't need a lot of money to have a picnic because you were going to eat lunch anyway. It was just a location change, right? Instead of having that bologna sandwich or that peanut butter and jelly sandwich over the summer when everybody's out of school, my grandma would take my grandpa's F-150, put all the kids in the neighborhood in the back of the pickup because it was only about a mile away, drive us to St. Ferdinand Park. We'd play on the big playground. And then when it was time for lunch, she had a blanket. We'd all eat sandwiches and have chips or, Cheetos or whatever. And everybody got a Vest soda, the cheap sodas. And that was a day. But I wonder how many kids do that because maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe kids still do that. Maybe families do. I hope so. So that's one of the things I think has disappeared, but I'm gonna get your feedback on that. Another thing that I was wondering about is things like, and these things are kind of making a comeback, but it was the arcade experience because that was kind of essential. Like when I was growing up, is that it's not just the video games because I am a retro. I'm not a gamer, but I'm nostalgic for that time. I remember that at the mall you would have Aladdin's castle, right? And it was always dark and it was kind of smoky, but it was almost like a casino for kids because it had all the sounds and all the, like, lights of the marquees of video games, and it was just a cool place to go. Your parents would give you $5, if you were lucky, or maybe $2. You take it to the change machine and put it in and make that noise, and the quarters would come out, and you would have to carefully decide, "Okay, how am I gonna spend these 8 quarters or these 12 quarters?" Am I gonna play Pac-Man? Am I gonna play Galaga? Am I gonna try pole position? Am I gonna do a game of air hockey? Um, but it was always exciting, and I think it was very social because I never really went to the arcade by myself. I would, meet up with a friend that would meet me at the mall, and we would make, a day of it. We'd have A&W root beer, hot dog and a root beer at the mall that day, or a Hot Sam. It was a pretzel place at the mall. And it was a very social thing. And I know that these kind of retro arcades are coming back, and you have big places like Dave and Buster's to kind of replicate that, but they're more like upscale. Aladdin's Castle, and we had, of course, you had Showbiz Pizza and you had Chuck E. Cheese. Those were kind of that, but like Aladdin's Castle was just like it was a little edgy. It was like a little dangerous. Like it was just an arcade. It wasn't a place to eat. It was just to go to play video games. And we had a place called Abracadabra as well in Florissant that was there for a short time next to our Kmart. Um, but I just remember like on a Saturday, like a Saturday afternoon, it was a big deal to meet your friends and do a social thing like that. Now, I know kids still play games together, but it's virtual, right? Like you can play your Switch, I guess, like with your friends across the internet. I know people do that on the PC, people do that on their Xbox and on their PlayStations. But the thing I remember is that we would spend the whole Saturday at the mall. We'd start off like at Aladdin's Castle, but then, like I said, we'd have lunch at Hot Sam or, Chick-fil-A, or I can't remember, Chick-fil-A was there at that point, or A&W or what have you. Wags was like a sit down restaurant next to Walgreens. It was crazy. Um, but then you just kind of walk around, go to Prince Plus, check out the posters of the ball players or whatever. But it was like a social thing. I just wonder if kids are losing that socialization, because driver's ed's changed, and I wonder how much of this has changed. So what are you seeing in your communities? Do kids still get out and do that? Maybe they just go different places. I hope so. Because Mallory still goes to the mall. She just goes to different malls. And a lot of our malls here around where I live now are kind of outdoor malls. They're like outlet malls. They're factory outlet malls around us, most of them. And they're not indoor covered malls. They're more outside. You got to walk around outside, which I'm not a fan of outside malls, unless the weather's. I'm not a fan of malls, period, really. I don't like shopping. I will go to an indoor mall for nostalgia reasons, but I do not like outdoor malls. It just seems like work. But I want to get your thoughts. So do kids still go to malls and do things like socialize at a what's it shifted to? Because the arcades aren't around anymore, but is there something that's replaced that? And what do you think about that picnic question? Do families and kids, especially, still, do you think most kids have gone on a picnic in their life? I want to get your thoughts on that. Patreon.com/BeOurGuest podcast. All right. Time to jump out of here. I'm going to be down at Walt Disney World this weekend. So please follow me on the social media at BeOurGuestMike, Instagram and Twitter. Interact with me. Send me a message while I'm down there. And because I'll be down there solo. So we can talk and have a good one. And we'll do this again next Tuesday. I'll recap everything that I saw and did and got to do during the races. So until the guys, I appreciate you so much. And thank you for letting me do what I love. I hope you always enjoy the shows. I hope we always have a friend here, because you definitely do in me. So you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.